call the Plan Commission for Tuesday, October 2nd to order. Roll call, please, Terry.
Mary Kodowski.
Here.
Ellison Williams.
Here.
Kim Bukowski.
Here.
Gary Paul.
Here.
And Campbell, Skiffington, and Allen are excused.
Okay, please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remember all of our men and women that we have throughout the world. Okay, I need action on the agenda. I have no changes.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Action on the minutes from the regular meeting of September 4th, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda. We have no public here other than the people who are on the agenda, so we'll move on. Number 7, action, I should put my glasses on for this. Action items. Discussion and possible action regarding a floodplain zoning map amendment request for parcels VA-L197, VA-L197-2, VA-L197-3, VA-L197-4, VA-L197-5, VA-L197-6, VA-L197-7, VA-L197-8, VA-L197-9, VA-L197-10, VA-L197-11, VA-L201, and VA-L202.
What happens when the village president can't see and some of the village members can't, village trustees can't hear?
You just
Just keep going?
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
You
Yo,
buy a-
Alice is here.
Yeah. You buy a pair of reader glasses and you keep on going. Okay. Mr. Shooty.
The requested floodplain zoning map amendment is at the request of a property owner and Mr. Dave Krauser with Mountain Associates, who's the agent for the property owner. The village of Ashwaubenon is the keeper of the floodplain zoning map for the village. In order for the applicant to perform a floodplain map amendment consistent with new data that Mr. Krauser and his crews have shot as far as the elevations for the actual floodplain, the village does have to go through a formal floodplain zoning map amendment. A little bit of background here. The original floodplain zoning you see up on the screen was determined off of the year 2000 contour that were performed as part of an aerial photography flight by Brown County. FEMA adopted those or used those contours to develop those the floodway and flood fringe that, as identified in the map up there. There are, of course, some inherent vagaries in the contours that were developed back in 2000. Mr. Krauser and his crews went out to the site and actually shot the elevations to determine where exactly the base flood elevation was. The information you have before you tonight is a more refined floodway and floodplain or flood fringe. Floodway being where flood waters will flow during a flood event, and flood fringe being where water will pool but will not flow during a flood event. Mr. Krauser and the property owner are in the audience if you have any questions for me or for them.
Aaron, you and I had a discussion on this afternoon. I guess the only question that keeps coming back to my mind is, in the event there is some disaster, 100-year flood, are we or who is responsible for that if there's any property damage? Because this is becoming more of a public thing with people having damages done to their homes or property with these high water rates we've got. So
I'll defer to Mr. Krauser.
okay.
State your name and address, please, just for the record.
Dave Krauser from Mao and Associates, 400 Security Boulevard.
Thank you.
What would happen in an event like that? That falls under FEMA. In fact, with all the flooding and stuff that you've seen that's been going on down in Carolinas and stuff, that's what happens. And that's why people pay flood insurance when they're actually in the, they're required to pay flood insurance if they're in the flood.
That's the word. Do people realize they should have flood insurance when they're in an area like this?
And here's what happens. If they have a mortgage on their property, they will actually be contacted by their bank, because the banks, under some federal regulation, have to require these people to carry flood insurance if they have a mortgage. And in fact, we do a ton of elevation certificates. We actually have done a lot of removals, because when you look at these FEMA maps, for one thing, they were all generated off aerial flights. So nobody actually went out and actually shoots the elevations on the ground.
Okay, you answered a question, because when I heard Aaron said aerial, and I'm thinking, this is not done the way you people do it with shooting the...
It's not, but I will say that and as we get into this, I can get more in depth with it. The last flight that Brown County had done, they've got a new way of doing a lot of this, which is called LiDAR. And it's actually been pretty darn accurate. Where they run into an issue is if we have a lot of tree cover, and where they can't actually get to the ground surface to actually get that ground elevation. So that's where there's where they'll run into an issue. If we get into a woods, obviously, especially if it's pine trees, they can't get through those, and that's where we'll have some issues. When we go back to the 2000 aerial flight that was done, and that's what these maps were based off of, there were some busts in that information, and there were some bad areas. Brown County was able to go back and actually pinpoint some of the areas, and they actually had the people who did the aerial flight correct some of these areas. But there were, Brown County's pretty big, so there were areas that they could not that they didn't catch, I guess, where there were some discrepancies, and that's what we ended up with here. So now we get into the 2009 aerial flights, or in fact, I think the 2010, weren't they, Aaron? So 2010 flight that they did, the accuracy was much better, and actually there were some areas out here that Aaron had called me on, and I know around there's that maintenance building for the golf course, and that floodway is actually running right through that building. That building was put in prior to 2000, so it was actually at that time they took into account where the floodplain and floodway were at that time when they built it. When you get into the 2010 contours and you start looking at the elevations that they have for the floodplain coming through there, it puts that building back in the floodway. And here's where the problem is. It kind of is what it is. And I don't believe that anybody's ever made anyone tear a building down, but is he probably going to end up paying flood insurance for that? Unfortunately, yes, he probably is. But he is in a floodplain, and that goes back to your question on who pays for this. And basically, their insurance pays for this if that event actually happens. The one thing with a 100-year event, which is what everybody's insuring to, that doesn't mean that we can't have a. In fact, I think just recently I heard that the events were 500 and 1,000 around Brown County that we just had. Those are way beyond a 100-year event, and there were a lot of areas that actually had some. We had parking lots where some cars got flooded. Because the storm sewer is not it's not designed to handle a 1,000-year storm. Crazy, we'd have 10-foot pipes in the ground to handle something like that, and we just can't. And that's where I think City of Green Bay has probably been the worst through the years. Most of their storm sewers barely handle a 10-year storm. So, and that's where a lot of their streets will, and a lot of them they'll flood. They'll get to the top of curb, and people are driving through a little bit of water. In some areas, a little more, but. It'll be there for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and then it's gone. The sewer, picks it up and takes it away. So
Aaron, FEMA and DNR are okay with this?
My understanding is that they have submitted to both FEMA and the DNR. One of the FEMA and DNR requirements is that the village goes ahead and rezones it out of floodplain.
Right. So, but both of those agencies have to approve this for it to be legitimate, so to speak?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Then you mentioned zoning. Do we have to rezone? Will that come up for rezoning then?
What we are actually doing is performing a floodplain zoning action. So this is actually part of the floodplain zoning map, separate from our land use zoning map.
Right.
So this does have to go to a public hearing and village board yet for approval.
Oh, it will, okay, okay. All right, I think you answered the question that I had a concern on, because, like I said, this is becoming more common, but we're finding out that some of our areas are not piped properly to handle what we've been getting.
And some, there's a big reason for some of the stormwater retention that you've been doing, because as new development occurs, the big problem is that it's not that there's more water, it's just that it's leaving the site faster. And the storm sewers can't handle it, and that's why you do stormwater management, because it slows this down so that the downstream ends can get rid of some of the water, and then these retention ponds are slowly releasing it. So there is a mechanism out there that's being in place to try and alleviate some of these issues. But I even on the 2009 maps here, we found a place out in Hobart where the flood elevation was, they had a 6-foot bust. It took me 5 years to get them to fix that.
Oh, is that right?
So
I remember when they redid those aerials, there were a lot of people that were upset because they had mortgages on their homes. And the one gentleman, I can't remember exactly where he lived, but just the very corner of his lot was all of a sudden floodplain, and his mortgage company made him purchase flood insurance.
well, and that's where the surveyors come in, because if we find that the just a corner of their lot is, we actually shoot around those structures. We can actually get them removed if they're above flood now, at or above. We can get them actually removed from the floodplain, but there has to be a LOMA that's completed. So we can get them out, because if it's a corner of their lot is in and the structure is not, then that structure should not have have to have flood insurance. Now, one thing that I didn't mention to you, if somebody has a mortgage, the banks will be letting them, because they're constantly looking at these, and they've caught up with most of them. They will notify these people, and they have to carry flood insurance. Where the problem comes in is if they don't carry a mortgage on their house, because if they don't have a mortgage on their house, nobody's out there looking at these, notifying them that they should have flood insurance, that I'm aware of anyway.
I'm going to make a motion
Okay,
to amend our floodplain zoning map for the parcels that are specified in item 7A, with the proviso that FEMA and DNR
And FEMA.
both approve the same request here from the property owner. In other words, it'd be subject to them approving it as well as the village.
okay. I'll second Ken's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the floodplain zoning amendment with the understanding that DNR and FEMA also do. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Items for next agenda, as of right now, I have none, but I wanted to say that we're having a a plan board meeting on Monday, November 5th. Because we have something for plan board that night, and Tuesday night is the election, and so we can't have, because we have election in here, we can't have it in here, and it'll be, probably well attended, so it will be Monday, November 5th.
Oh, Monday, oh.
Monday,
Okay,
okay?
very good.
Okay.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Come on.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done.
Right on time.